Welcome to Hoops HD, a
I'm
smaller
here.
panel than normal tonight. This is our bracket rundown show. I'm your host,
Woohoo!
Jim Sherwood, joined by John Titel and David Griggs for brackets. David,
Yes,
excited.
bracket. Oh, absolutely.
Actually,
Um,
I'm going to start with something here real quick. Just going to throw it up on the screen here, David, because you are such a huge bracket fan. Uh,
yeah.
we have a conference tournament bracket that is official. There it is.
All right.
The Atlantic
So is
Sun.
this yeah. So is that the bracket that we're revealing? I thought we were doing the NCAA bracket, but
Uh,
I wanted to say that like I did project the ASUN conference tournament. Like I did ASUN bracketology, and I didn't get all the seeds right, but I got the entire field right.
oh,
I was 8 of 8.
8 of 8. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
uh, but uh, but but this is our bracket rundown show. What we did for this show is, as I asked myself, along with David and John, we all submitted our top 50 teams in the nation, regardless of conference. Also, a couple of other colleagues that couldn't be here tonight, Matt Sikowski and John Slika, also submitted. Did a little scoring of that, I guess a cross-country vote type of scoring of that list, and as a result of that, came up with a consensus field, to which I added in the additional automatic bids at the bottom of it. But we now actually have our current consensus bracket as of at least the start of play here on Thursday, February 22nd, although we're recording this around 10 o'clock. No major upsets tonight that I've noticed. Although there was, before we pull that up though, Titel, there was a little bit of major news tonight, unfortunately, involving your Arizona Wildcats.
So our good friend Alonzo Trier, apparently it takes a little longer to get some substances out of your system than one would think. He had the suspension last year with the PEDs, and then he came back and was great. And then unfortunately this year it's the opposite. He started out great, and now he's got the substances in his system. NCAA announced suspension. Arizona, I heard, is going to appeal. I don't know if he's going to be out a game or a week or the season. Obviously, this throws the whole Pac-12 out of whack because now clears the way for the Pac-12 tourney, because I think that the Wildcats can win the regular season title still, as I believe they're 2 games up on USC in the loss column. But for the tournament, who knows?
Well, let me ask you this before we go to the brackets. Let's assume that the worst case for Arizona, and that they do not win any appeal, and he is done for the season. But that they, win a couple more games here the regular season, win 1 or 2 in the Pac-12 tournament, have a resume close to where they are right now going in. Do you dock them a seed line or 2 because they're not going to have Trier?
I don't know about 2. I would definitely dock them 1 in terms of, like, if they're losing to an Oregon team that they've already beaten and it's a close game and Trier might have made the difference, I think that's an excusable loss. If they're losing to Oregon State tonight by 20, thank God they're not. Like, that's a separate thing that I don't know how many Triers we would need to beat them, but I could see them docking them 1 seed line.
All right. Let me go ahead and pull the screen up. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, like the NCAA, I take, and I am just now hearing this, but it was the NCAA that performed the test, not an internal test from Arizona. I take it, since Arizona is appealing, and just so the audience know, like, you never know when they're coming. I mean, you get a little bit of notice, and when they show up, you don't know who they're going to test. So it is kind of a random thing. Now, during the championships, and in basketball, that would be the NCAA tournament, there are random tests after each game. They'll pull 2 or 3 players aside and make them test, and that's true for every tournament, be it baseball, softball. But during the season, like, you might not see them at all. You might see them every week. Not every week. That would be ridiculous. But you don't know when they're coming, and when you come, you don't know who they're going to test. So just kind of, I don't know if you can say it was bad luck in a sense, but you don't. I don't know if there was any way to foresee this. So
No way to foresee it, but I mean, the bigger question is it what they are claiming, which was just still a trace element of the substance that he unwittingly took 2 years ago, or is it something new? And I think that's the big concern here, and that's where the appeal is going to turn out,
okay,
one way or the other.
I don't know enough about it to speak on it. I should just shut up now.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about some of the teams here, actually, and let's go with our number 1 team overall. I don't think
And
there's
that is
any surprise here.
and Tim Miles just doing a great job. Oh, it's Virginia.
Yes.
He is. He is not the number 1 seed overall, though. But Virginia, you know, Titel. I mean, I think they're getting close to almost locking at least a 1 seed in, if not the number 1 overall. I mean, you still got three regular season games left.
You can take Virginia out of Charlottesville, but only if you put them in Charlotte, apparently. I think this is a good pick, and I think this is a good place for them. And they've already clinched the top seed in the ACC, which is one of the best conferences in the nation. I think you're going to see them easily get to Atlanta, and I think you're going to see a whole bunch of orange and blue in the stands down in Atlanta.
Yeah. And David, it was actually unanimous for everybody that voted for this. Not only our number 1 overall, but our number 2 overall as well here with Villanova coming in.
Yeah, and I think that it is unanimous. I mean, those are clearly the top 2 teams. I think Virginia right now is ahead above. Now, you cannot help but be incredibly impressed with Villanova's win at Xavier. I know Virginia has the big win at Duke in their overall profile, but I would assume that we're going to see Xavier on this 1 line. 1 seeds just don't lose at home unless it's to other 1 seed. So if you beat a 1 seed in a true road game, which Villanova has done, I agree that Virginia is better overall. I had them the overall number 1, but I do think that win, and not just that they won, but that they didn't really even sweat in that game, was one of the more impressive singular showings that we've seen by a team this season.
I agree. David, you mentioned Xavier. This was not quite unanimous that they were number 3 overall, but it was unanimous that they were a 1 seed. And Titel, you've been singing the praises of this Xavier team for a few weeks now, maybe a few months now.
I am. I mean, granted, they were also losing to Georgetown in the second half a couple nights ago, so that certainly gave me some cause for concern. I think this is a legit 1 seed, so I'm glad to see they're up there. They've been hovering in 2 or 3 range most of the season, but they're really stepping on the pedal as we get closer to March. Not sure about I wish Stalika was here to tell us how far it is from Omaha as the crow flies, but I think they should have a good chance when they get kept in the Midwest, where there are good Midwestern values and good Midwestern fans are.
Yeah, it's actually interesting where they would go for the first 2 rounds. But as the crow flies, it's slightly closer to Detroit than it would be to Nashville, and just a few more miles beyond that to Pittsburgh. They're kind of almost central, all 3 cities.
Well, I kind of disagree with that. I don't think you should send a protected seat to Detroit. You're supposed to be rewarding teams. Why would you make them go to Detroit?
Detroit is very nice in March if you...
Detroit is very nice in March if you're in Nashville.
Yes. Well, how about being in Wichita, where Kansas is, as the 4th 1 seed, having to head out west for the regional? But David, Kansas is our number 4 overall team here.
And this is an interesting pick. I had them 5th, I think, or maybe 6th. I actually had North Carolina as the 4th number 1, but this is a pretty close 4th. My thing about Kansas is I like their paper the most, but as weird as this sounds, I just don't like their team as much. And it's a very unusual case. When you look at what they've done on the road, it is tremendous. 7 true road wins, and they're not just beating up. I mean, they've won at TCU, at Texas, at a lot of places that are hard to win. They have the neutral floor win against Kentucky, which is looking less and less impressive. But you look at some of the losses at home, and while none of them are bad, it's a few more than what you normally. Like I said, I just got done explaining that 1 seeds don't lose at home, yet Kansas has lost at home 3.5 times. And once was to Washington, who may not even make our field. So it's kind of a bizarre case, but that's looking at it categorically. When you look at everybody side by side, I mean, I don't see how you can have them outside the top 5 or 6.
Well, first of all,
let me ask the selection committee guessing expert, where do you think the committee would have Kansas?
On the 1 line, if that's what you mean. I mean, look at all the quadrant 1 wins. The Oklahoma State loss is looking better by the moment. I think the Cowboys might actually end up making the field, but that's for a separate show. And it was by 5 points, and they lose at home a lot, like you said. So I love 7-2 on the road. I love the strength of schedule 3. They have a ton of great metrics.
Yeah, I agree completely with everything that John just said. That is the North Carolina profile on the right there. And if you want to complain about home losses, David, Wofford and NC State at home is combined is worse than just Oklahoma State at home when you look at the bad.
Well, that's only if you don't apply the rule where you throw out the losses.
But let me go here. The number 5 team overall. This is starting off our 2 line. Actually, was a bit of a shock to me. I would have been with you that I like Carolina better than this, but actually came in as Duke by the consensus. David, do you see a case there for Duke?
I do. If your question is, do they have a case? They absolutely do. I didn't have them quite this high, but they have a case to be this high, especially when they're playing as well as they are. I was real critical of them in earlier parts of the year. The losses to Boston College and what was it, Georgia Tech? Or I'm sorry, St. John's, teams that aren't in the tournament. And the loss to NC State, at the time that happened, I didn't think NC State was a tournament team, but I do now. And but look at their win. I mean, the win at Clemson. Clemson is a fringe protected seat. That's pretty good. And a lot of teams on the 2 line might not have a singular win that good. And they have played pretty well on the road, a little bit better actually than what I think we normally see. And they also have the Michigan State win, who, while not a true road win, was on a neutral site. So, yeah, if this were debate class and you were said make a case for Duke, you could easily do it. I like North Carolina a little better, but they're both playing really well, and I get the sense that both have improved a lot as the year has gone along.
Well, John, let me ask you this question here. I mean, when you look at Duke, one thing that quickly stands out with a very quick glance here is North Carolina is so much more in Quadrant 1. If I have to defend Duke a little bit, is they've got a lot here in Quadrant 2 that's actually a ton of quality there with Florida State, Vodtech, Louisville, Texas, Florida. But do you agree with our consensus here that Duke is better than Carolina?
I do, and so I want to, if you can isolate the Notre Dame games for each, that's what I want to focus on. So as you can see on the left side here, Duke beat Notre Dame by 22 points, granted without Bonzie Colson and at home, which is a tier 2 one. On the right side here, Carolina won at Notre Dame by a single point in January, also without Bonzie, and it's a tier 1 victory. I understand home versus away, but I mean, tell me, guys, are you more impressed by beating Notre Dame on the road by 1 or by destroying them at home by 22?
Well, I thought you were going to point out here the fact that North Carolina also played Notre Dame at home, but only won by 17 compared to the 22. So the 5 points makes Duke better, right? But I agree with you, though. But I think that's why why the road game is a tier 1 win versus the home game being a tier 2, because it is more impressive to win on the road, isn't it? Or maybe you're saying it's the other. Maybe you're saying it's more impressive.
I'm saying if it's 1 point versus 5 points, maybe, but I'm more impressed if you beat a team by 22 points anywhere on planet Earth than if you beat them by 1 at their gym, personally.
David, do you agree with that?
Maybe with that margin, yeah. But, I mean, they did play twice. And you isolate that. And, in the vacuum, in that isolation, yes, I agree that the 22-point win is more impressive. But there's a lot more here. The win at Tennessee, a fringe protected seed. We'll see if they end up on the 4 line or not. But they're pretty good. I think that's on par with the Clemson win. And, they won at Syracuse, who is hovering around the bubble, but still pretty good at home. The win at Louisville, well, never mind. The win at NC State I thought they looked really good in that game. And I guess more than anything else, I just really like how Carolina's been playing lately. I know it's the entire body of work. They do have the worst loss on there, but I just think that right now, and when they played recently, they won, albeit at home. I just think right now both teams are playing really well, but Carolina's playing a little bit better, and their profile's better. So that's why I would pick Carolina over the 2. They're probably not even next, are they?
They are next.
Okay.
The big difference there is Duke, by being 5 overall, would get the East region as opposed to the Midwest region, and get Charlotte as opposed to Nashville. So that would be a huge difference, though, for Carolina. If they were 5th overall here, they'd get Charlotte and they'd get the East region. So it does mean a lot, even though they're back to back against each other
Right. Well, it just sucks that they have to go so far away from home to play in Charlotte. I mean, you couldn't get them to Pittsburgh or somewhere closer.
Number 7 overall is Auburn, the best team in the SEC, and I think that was pretty consensus that they belong up here, at least on the 2 line. And number 8 overall, we had coming in Michigan State. And Titel, let me ask you about this Michigan State team. Still number 1 in the polls here, and 11-game winning streak, tied with a little school named Grambling for the longest win streak in the nation. Should be a 1 seed though if they're number 1 in the polls, shouldn't you?
I don't know if the history in front of me, but I'd love to see if any team ranked number 1 in the nation has ever not been a number 1 seed. I assume it has never or very rarely happened at all. I also love Grambling making the show, of course. A couple things I wanted to just quickly go back to Duke, North Carolina. You have to remember, this is still late February. These 2 teams could play each of the next, not this Saturday, but the next 2 Saturdays in the regular season finale and then the ACC semifinal game. So if one of those teams beats the other team twice in 2 weeks in March, I think that might give them the edge. So there's plenty of basketball left to be played.
Right. Good point. David, let me start off the 3 line here for you.
All right.
And
I again, just an incredible job. I thought they should have been higher, but Tim Miles in Nebraska. Oh,
no, it's another Big 12 team here. How about Texas Tech?
I as recently as last week, they were actually on my 1 line. I just thought they were having a really great season, and they still are. You know, even after the Baylor loss, I still had them up there because I was just like, well, Baylor just creamed Kansas, and Baylor's really hot right now, and Texas Tech was right in that game. They barely lost. But earlier this week, getting beaten at Oklahoma State the way that they did kind of shook me. It's probably the worst game I've seen Texas Tech play. And it wasn't horrible. It's hard to win at Okie State. But I thought up until that game, I really thought they were 1 seed good. And I really thought that they had not just a pathway to finish in outright first place, but were good enough to where the likelihood of it happening was pretty high. But since that loss, yeah, I think I may have had them on the 2, or maybe I didn't even have them that high. But this is about where I think they would be.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing with that loss, you got to look how much was that them looking past that game to this weekend hosting Kansas, and probably the biggest game in Texas Tech history.
It would have been a lot bigger had they won it.
It would have been a lot bigger had they won it. But but if they bounce back and they get this win on Saturday against Kansas, you almost start throwing away that Oklahoma State game because they more than make up for it, I think.
Yeah, they more than make up for it, and then they're certainly going to have opportunities to make up for it, one being against Kansas and then the rest of the regular season. I mean, if they win out and win the Big 12 tournament, you almost have to put them on the 1 line at that point, don't you?
Well, yeah, but I don't know if they're going to do that good. But let's look at what else we got here on the 3 line. Purdue coming in at number 10 overall, also on the 3 line, Titel, the second Big 10 team there. Do you agree with that Purdue is now a step below Michigan State?
They almost lost to Illinois tonight. There could be several steps below this part. Thank God they were able to pull that one out. Thanks to 40 points from Carson Edwards, making a late run at the Big Ten Player of the Year award. No, I think that I've seen some people listen to a 2 seed, but after they lost 3 in a row, I think 3 seed is just perfect for them. Not sure about how they would match up with Auburn. That seems like a big contrast in styles between the 2 teams.
Yeah, you're seeing some potential regional semifinals showing up, and we'll see even more potential matchups as we go further along here. Number 11 overall is Tennessee, the second team not of the SEC. David, you hinted whether they're going to make the top 16. Actually, they made it into the top 12 here, or top 11.
Yeah. You almost like them a little more than I do. I like them a lot. I just don't know. I kind of get the sense that they've kind of played beyond. They've overachieved a little bit. I don't mean that in a negative way. I actually mean it praiseworthy, but they have some warts on there too, especially recently. Alabama, Arkansas. Now, those are good teams, but at Georgia, at Missouri, you kind of expect the protected seeds to be able to win on the road against either non-tournament teams or teams in the bottom half of the bracket, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, but they do have a lot of really good road wins, though. At Kentucky, at South Carolina is not that bad. The neutral court win over Purdue is huge. And the neutral court win over NC State on there. So I like this Tennessee team a lot. There are no warts. There are no bad losses. I still have North Carolina up here. North Carolina has done a lot more bad than Tennessee has this season. Now, they've also done a lot more good, but that's why they're borderline 1 seed and Tennessee's barely a 3.
Yeah, one of the good things they did was win at Tennessee.
Yeah, including winning at Tennessee, exactly. Titel, to finish off the 3 line, we have one more team here. Big mystery who it's going to be, a potential Michigan State matchup. And how about Clemson, a team that is heading in the wrong direction right now?
Man, we got the Rick Barnes line with Tennessee and Clemson there. Yes, the Brad Brownell's best have I really thought that they were heading towards 1 seed territory, which I still can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but they were like as of a couple weeks ago, and then they fell back to earth. I think that with Brownell's history in the tourney being, shall we say, less than stellar, that the last thing he would wish on his team is to play Tom Izzo and Bill Self back-to-back. I mean, good God.
He won't get past Tom Izzo in this bracket, in my opinion. He may not even get to Tom Izzo.
Yeah.
He's over there.
Yeah.
But start off the 4 line here, Gonzaga. And Titel, I want to stick with you actually for a second because you were the only one of us that voted that did not have Gonzaga as one of the top 16 teams. And I wanted to go to you on that and ask you why you would consider the Zags below the top 16 at the moment.
I think it's more just like quality of schedule, frankly. They certainly have the wins, and they've beaten good teams like St. Mary's, and they had some great wins at the PK80 and stuff. But when you talk about teams we haven't mentioned so far, like Cincinnati and Arizona and Wichita and West Virginia, who I assume are right around the corner, I think those teams have a little better non-conference strength of schedule and wins. But prove me wrong.
Well, yeah, and I just want to get the Gonzaga profile up. I mean, David, they do have the San Diego State loss, which is still a head scratcher, but
but everybody kind of has one. But Ohio State away from home at St. Mary's was pretty good, and they blasted Washington. Of course, that was before Washington kind of hit their stride. I think that, and I hate to just look at one singular game, but how handily they won at St. Mary's just really impressed me. And you start to look at everything else, and I know the committee might not look at it this way. In fact, they probably don't, because I think the committee's paper heavy. But you think that the reason their numbers aren't there and the reason their schedule isn't there is more their circumstance than how good they actually are. I think this Gonzaga team's really good.
I'll tell you, I also really like that home win over Creighton, especially because if you look to the left of Creighton's name, the date, December 1st, when Creighton actually was a good team as opposed to
it wasn't February yet, and they were playing great.
Rest of the 4 line here, or at least through order here, Wichita State, who we just mentioned, coming in on the 4 line as well, a team that has been rocketing up, especially after that huge win at Cincinnati last week.
I guess that means they're actually ahead of Cincinnati, which I had them, which is where I had them.
And Titel, there they are, since back-to-back, Wichita 14, Cincinnati 15 overall.
I think that everybody's disappointed that we couldn't get Kansas and Wichita State in the same bracket, but I'll let it slide. The chance to see Cincy and Virginia, man, what a defensive battle that would be! Amazing.
Yeah,
you really need to put Cincinnati in the Midwest and Wichita in the West.
Well, the problem here is that because we voted Gonzaga at the top, Gonzaga would go out west, and once Kansas.
Well, then no. Okay, I take it back. I don't like them on the 4 line. Get rid of them. Move them down. They haven't beaten anybody. Look at that profile. All those quadrant 4 wins.
Down the line, absolutely, David. Our less protected seed. There they are for now, at least. The Arizona Wildcats, Titel, narrowly beating out the team that I thought should be up there, but I would have kind of leaned towards the Mountaineers maybe or somebody else. But how about the Wildcats up there?
I'll take it today because with the news, I really expect them to go nowhere but down. I don't think they're going to win the end of the regular season and then sweep the Pac-12 tourney. I see a couple losses in my favorite team's future here. Love them in San Diego, and sucks for the 5 seed, whoever has to go out there and play them out there. I'm surprised to see them because I really assumed it was going to be a San Diego, Los Angeles kind of run for them, which everybody in Tucson was hoping for. I think we've played Villanova in Pennsylvania before. I think in Philly a couple of years ago, and it didn't work out so well, if I recall. So a little nervous about that game if we get that far, which at this point I just want us to make it and see where we're at.
We'll have to be in Boston this time around, so it's a little bit further away than Philly, but a little further trip for Arizona, though, I think.
Is it?
And then Duke waiting on the horizon if you get past them, by the way. So, yeah, not a good sign. But let's find out who the potential Arizona second-round matchup would be. All those 5 seeds at once, actually. And very winnable game, though, Titel. How about Rhode Island?
So if they were still undefeated, I'd be panicking a little bit just because I'm a big fan of momentum in late February. The fact that they came back to earth is consoling. It might give them refocused motivation, which is always dangerous. But the fact that this is in San Diego, if this was in Boston, I'd be very nervous. The fact that it's in San Diego gives me a lot of hope.
And they know how to beat coaches named Hurley. They've done it twice already. David, the other 3 teams there, Ohio State and Michigan on the right side of the screen, and West Virginia against Cincinnati in a pretty interesting potential matchup there in the South.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised Michigan is this high. I had them around here, but I thought that when I put them there that I had them a lot higher than everybody else. So, I mean, I thought we'd been dogging Michigan on the shows quite a bit, so it's kind of crazy to see them up that high. I like this Rhode Island team. They haven't done much. They haven't had many opportunities to play against NIT caliber teams, much less NCAA tournament teams. I don't know if I like them enough to beat Arizona, but they are pretty good.
Well, I put that Michigan profile up, as you can see. I mean, they are in the polls. They're up there in the top 16, 17th, and just, 4 wins in a row, including the Ohio State win, the nice wins at Penn State, at Wisconsin, even at Michigan State going back to January. I think it's just a team that's playing so well right now, and had the benefit of getting quality Big Ten opponents, which is tough to get these days, but they got them. And
right, and you got to love what they did. I mean, God, did they run roughshod over those sub-300 teams.
Well, let's scroll down them all.
Yeah. Right.
Titel, let's take a look at the 6th line here. Potential matchups for teams like Purdue, Texas Tech, Clemson. We've got Kentucky coming in there against Purdue, Tennessee versus Butler, Texas Tech against Florida State, and there's Arizona State against Clemson. Your thoughts on those 4 teams?
Look at all those Hurleys in the old tournament. I like the Tennessee Butler matchup just because it's weird. Like, it seems for the past decade it's been Butler as like the higher seeded, higher expectation team, even though they're a mid-major compared to an SEC traditional power like Tennessee. So flip the tables a little bit is interesting. And Matt Painter, he's been waiting a while to get to the Sweet 16 and go further. And the last person he wants to see, I assume, is Calipari. I know Kentucky's young. I know they've had some major hiccups. But if there's one guy who knows how to win in March on the 6th line, it ain't Leonard Hamilton. It's John Calipari.
Well, I mean, to be fair to Leonard Hamilton, he doesn't really know how to win regardless of what line he ends up on. They seem to go out as the better-seeded team quite frequently, Florida State.
I would not count on a Texas Tech Florida State game there because Florida State's a team that I would definitely pick as a first-round upset type of candidate in a tournament. As I might on the Arizona State on the line next to them as well there, David.
Yeah. Well, Arizona State, I mean, it just goes to show you how awesome the Pac-12 is. I mean, they were so good out of conference, ranked 3rd in the nation, and then they get into that hell of a league and struggle. And Bill Walton made some good points. What do you say that about 8 or 9 teams belong in?
Yeah. So, Joe Lunardi did not agree with him tonight. Said that all those teams are NIT teams, and really offended Bill Walton. I mean, he told Joe Lunardi that he's got to get out of his bunker and come out to see the Conference of Champions.
Yeah, I love Bill Walton. So entertaining. I want Bill Walton to be on the selection committee, and I want to broadcast the proceedings. He'd be talking about the Grateful Dead and like tie-dye and all kinds of stuff during.
John,
It
I
would be
just
awesome.
tossed the 7 seeds up there. Auburn with a potential matchup with TCU, Duke, Florida, North Carolina, Alabama, Michigan State, Seton Hall there. Uh, Anything when you look at those lines, that line that really shocks you in terms of who we put in there as well?
SEC is getting a lot of. Sorry, David. Go ahead.
Who did you? I
I
think he
asked
called
John,
on you.
but you know.
Yeah, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
A lot of SEC teams making the bracket so far. I like that. This has really been a nice rebound year for them. If you like Blue Bloods, Duke and Florida, they've won a lot of titles in the past 15 years. As far as Carolina, Alabama, if you like point guards, Joel Berry against Colin Sexton, the senior against the freshman, that would be, I think, one of the premier matchups maybe in the second round if all goes to form.
Just kind of fun to think Auburn and TCU, the long tournament droughts that they've had, they could potentially meet up not just in the tournament, but one of them going to the Sweet 16. That would be great.
Well, let's go with one more with the 8 line here, which are the potential opponents in the second round for the 1 seeds. And David, as they come up on the screen there, we see Miami against Virginia, which is a permissible all ACC matchup. Vatech against Villanova, Nevada against Xavier, and Kansas against Houston.
Kansas Houston would be a fun one. Although Houston having to sweat a little bit at Memphis tonight.
And in Wichita, I wouldn't give Houston a shot in that game, but
right. Yeah, I guess it works out that way. Virginia Miami would just not be fun. We've seen it already.
Yeah, but let me ask a couple of these teams, though. First of all, Nevada. John, you had Nevada, I think, up a couple seed lines higher than this. You're a lot
I had them higher than this.
David, higher as well, yeah.
Yeah.
I have them as a 6th seed in my bracket last Sunday, and if they keep winning, I think they're going to keep going up. I don't think they're going to end up as like a 3 seed or anything ridiculous, but as we see the profile, I mean, they've gone out and they've had some bumps in the road recently. We see the UNLV loss and the horrible Wyoming loss where you give up 104 points. Good Lord. Not a ton of Tier 1, and if Boise keeps falling, it's going to end up as a Tier 2. The Rhode Island win is going to carry weight all year. Great non-conference strength of schedule. Even though they couldn't beat the Texas Techs and TCUs of the world, we see that those teams are already in the bracket. So the fact that they were within single digits of these top 8 seeds, I think, really counts for a lot.
Well, let me ask you, though, how real is that non-conference strength of schedule? Because it is built up on the fact that they played a ton of Tier 3 as opposed to a ton of Tier 4. And they did not really play a ton of teams in the Tier 1s and 2s non-conference. So isn't it a bit of a fraudulent strength of schedule?
I don't know about a little maybe. I mean, when you're 10-2 on the road, regardless of whether you're playing Tier 1 or Tier 4, that impresses me. I think this is where the tiers system is going to be most interesting this year, is when you're in the committee room on Sunday and you're like, well, they're going to ask the exact question you asked, and we'll see when they end up, if they're Nevada's a 6 or a 10 or something in between, we'll see exactly how much credence and power they give to a team that had so many wins in Tier 3.
Yeah. David, I got Houston up there on the right side. This is actually a team that there's some differences in. I think, John, you also had them a lot higher than this seed line. David, you had them a little bit lower than this, even in your field.
Yeah, I had them on the 9 line.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, it wasn't that outrageous. And there's a lot of good here. I mean, the home wins against Cincinnati and Wichita are really good. I like that Temple road win. I know Temple is French bubble, but it's not the easiest place to win. Houston, and the other thing I'll say about Houston, and I say this as they're sweating out Memphis, but I think that they have improved as the year has gone along. Kelvin Sampson done a really good job there. And I think that their resume will continue to improve because they're going to have more opportunities either in their remaining schedule there. I mean, if they get this win tonight, they have a chance at 2 more road wins. And then in the conference tournament, if they get to the semis, which you would assume that they would, they're going to face another strong opponent and have a chance to get yet another win. So it could get up to the 6 range, really. But I for now, I just had them about on the 9. I like them. It's just, I guess, when I look at the teams that I had ahead of them, I don't quite like them that much.
John, while we do have the bad Drexel loss there, Drexel did something tonight that has never been done in NCAA history. For those of you that might have missed it, Drexel trailed 53-19 to Delaware tonight. Won the game 85-83. That is a 34-point that they were down that they came back from. That is an NCAA record. So don't go hurting that. Don't go be too much down on that Drexel loss. Drexel, very dangerous team once they're down by 34 points.
Yep.
You go into the city of Philadelphia along 34th Street. Even if you don't go to Penn, you still got problems at Drexel up the streets.
Yep.
Dear.
Let's take a look at the 9 season. These are the potential. So now we're getting some first-round matchups showing up on the screen, or potential first-round matchups. But, John, A&M against Miami, Oklahoma against Vatech, NC State versus Nevada, and Creighton versus Houston.
Loving Miami and A&M, although granted, I would have loved it 2 months ago when they were both top 10 teams. They've really fallen off. It should be a great matchup because I think that both teams have a lot of NBA caliber talent on them. And Larrañaga's got a good history in the tourney, so I think I'd give him the edge. I don't know about Bruce Brown's health. He's the big key. I think if he's out, I think I would give the edge to the Aggies, but I think he's going to be healthy. I don't know if they have officially ruled him out for the year, so I think there's hope for him.
Nevada, NC State. Oh, my God, that would be a good game.
Well, David, let's talk about the Sooners here because this is the lowest they have been, I think, since the first week of the season in any bracket projection I've seen. Now wearing dark jerseys in the first round, according to our consensus here, based on 6 losses in a row at this point.
Yeah. And it's 6 losses in a row, and it's 9 out of 11 total, and it's really getting problematic to the point to where you look at this, and there's a lot of good stuff on there. The wins at TCU and Wichita State, but that's it. They have no other road wins, and they just can't seem to get it back into the gear. I mean, this is beyond a slump. This is not a slide. This is a dive. And when you look at their remaining games, if they don't beat Kansas State and Iowa State at home, are they in danger of falling all the way out?
John, what do you think? If you add in what would basically be 2 more Tier 2 losses there, Kansas State and Iowa State at home, is that it for the Sooners?
So if you're telling me they go 0-3 in the week ahead to go 16-14 in the regular season and lose their opening round game in the tourney to go 16-15, out.
What if they win one? What if they do win that Iowa State game? Let's give them that one. Now you're talking 17-14.
It's weird to think that one game against a non-100 team, a team outside the top 100, could make a difference, but it could. I don't think the committee would go on record and say that they want Trae Young in the tourney. They want Trae Young in the tourney, though, but God, look at that road record. It's ugly. And
this is a team that at one point was looking like one of the best teams in the nation. We were talking about them as a 1 seed. We think it was a number 1 overall way back in December, David. It just
we did. I one of the brackets I did, I forget how early it was, but they were on the 1 line along with Texas Tech and West Virginia.
I think we'd be remiss without a quick mention of one other team that came in on our 9 line here that is also heading in the wrong direction. Creighton is doing a typical December here, David, and just as their profile is just getting pretty ugly at this point. Yeah,
Greg McDermott, ever since his Northern Iowa days, I want to say it was the 06 season, they were 21-3. I forget the specifics, and I'm not going to look it up, so this is not exactly correct, but we'll approximate it. I want to say that they were 19-3 at one point, or 18-3, and they were in the rankings. I think they were as high as the teens, and they had beaten teams that were ranked previous to that, and I think they lost 7 of their next 9, still made the tournament as an 11 seed, and then went out in the round of 64. And maybe not that to that extreme, but every year it seems like a Greg McDermott coach team seems to follow that path. He's below 500. I think he's actually around 400 throughout his career in his last 10 games, if you go back and look at it. So, and here it is again. They have one Div 1 win in the month of February so far. Now, to be fair, it wasn't the easiest schedule, but still one Div 1 win this month. and it was against DePaul by about 2 points.
Well, John, let me ask you the same question we just asked in Oklahoma. Let's assume they lose that Villanova home game. Let's assume
Which
they
is
lose
a
at
safe
Marquette.
assumption.
Let's assume they lose at Marquette. They beat DePaul. They lose in the first round of the Big East tournament. Are we leaving Creighton out of the field?
20-12. Not looking great. And UCLA currently trailing Utah by 6. That Tier 1 win could quickly turn into a Tier 2 win. And if the only Tier 1 win on your resume is Seton Hall, my friends, I don't think this going to go anywhere. Granted, when 4 year losses are to 2 of the top 3 RPI in the nation, like, you get a lot of credit for the strength of schedule in conference. 242 out of conference, I think it's going to bite them in the butt.
I agree. They are not safe by any means in my book. They may have to win that Marquette game. That may be the key to their season right there.
I don't think they will. But that's just me.
They could also lose the DePaul game at home, and that could make it easy too.
Right? Yeah.
Here's the 10 seeds showing up on the screen. Missouri, who gets TCU, Providence, who gets Florida, St. Mary's against Alabama, Arkansas against Seton Hall there. David, your thoughts on that line?
Well, I don't see how, like with what we just said about Creighton, you could have them on the 9 line. I really think you need to swap Mizzou with Creighton.
Okay.
Now.
John, have some serious comments.
Couple things. One, I like the Billy Donovan game. I like the Billy Donovan game with Florida versus Providence. That should be fantastic. And in terms of Missouri, like, if they can get by TCU, which now that Michael Porter Jr. is back, has been declared thumbs up, he should be back, and it'll be – I don't know how he's going to fit in, but I think it can only be good. When you look at how Missouri did against Auburn this year, lost by 18 points at home without Porter, I think he might make a difference if they end up facing him again with a healthy Porter.
I guess the big question is what type of shape is he in at this point? Can they integrate him into the offense? You've got, probably – I don't know that he's going to play this weekend or not. He may only have 2 games with him and then the SEC tournament. It'd be nice if they can make a run in the SEC tournament, get a few more games with him. David, I got to ask you about Arkansas. I believe that you had them either your last team in or your first team out. Not even the field. And I
not impressed. Well, pull them up.
Here they are.
Okay, well, I mean, they just seem to be nosediving a lot. Like, they have a couple of home wins, but I mean, Texas A&M, they weren't exactly at full strength when they got that win. Oklahoma, I think you got to give them some credit for that because of how well they were playing. I don't think Georgia is an NCAA tournament team. I just haven't really been impressed. It seems like time after time after time when they've had the chance to make the statement, they haven't. I mean, that's a lot of losses to – I know that these are quadrant runs, but Houston is not in the top half of the bracket. Neither is A&M. Mississippi State probably not in the bracket at all. Florida's schizophrenic. They're either a 1 seed or an NIT team, depending on what night you get them. So I just don't really see it when lining them up against everybody else. I will also say that unlike most years, I don't think the bubble is as weak as it – I think it's stronger than what we're used to seeing.
Well, John, I mean, you look at that Arkansas remaining schedule at Alabama, Auburn home, at Missouri. They could be out or they could be solidly in, right?
I think this is very much a control your own destiny kind of team, which most of the teams that we're getting to at the 9, 10, 11 line are. That's another guy. I mean, like, Michael Porter Jr. could make or break that game, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's take a look at most of the 11 line. I'll reveal 3 of them. We're going to hold off for a second on revealing to our first 4, but the final 3 teams that avoided the first 4.
Very, very curious.
Middle
Tennessee is inside the bubble. All right.
Yeah,
but the question is, do they stay there if they lose in the conference tournament?
Yeah. Kansas State against Kentucky, Middle Tennessee against Florida State, Baylor against Arizona State there. And Tytel, what about that Middle Tennessee team? And answer David's question. Let's say they win their last couple of regular season games. They lose in the CUSA tournament, semifinals or final. Can they make it into the field?
It's going to be very tough, I think, if they don't win the conference tourney. The resume stacks up favorably. Like, they have some good wins, and they don't have a ton of bad losses, and they have a good track record, and I wouldn't want to face them in March. But I don't think there's a ton of at-large bids to go around for mid-majors these days. Can you imagine if they win out and Missouri loses a couple and they flip and Middle Tennessee's a 10 seed in Nashville? Is that possible? And if so, Would anybody want to play them in Nashville?
That is absolutely possible.
It is absolutely possible. In fact, the guidelines would, if it's available, that's where they would go.
Yeah, I think when we did this last week, we did have them on the 10 line, and I think they were playing in Nashville, in fact. So, Kentucky, Kansas State, Arizona State, Baylor. That Baylor team, kind of surprised me they were down on the 11 line, David. I thought we would almost had them higher than this. It's one of the teams that's really trending up right now, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, maybe they're on the 11 line right now, but the season isn't over right now, and the way they're playing, I think they're going to end up higher than that because they're going to have the chance to really build quite a bit on their resume. So,
John, I'm going to show you who Butler is going to potentially be playing in the first round. One of two teams should be showing up right about now, and you nailed it.
Oh!
The winner of a UCLA-Syracuse first four game in Dayton. And what about that, especially with UCLA is actually in a close game right now with Utah as we record this.
Full disclosure, I did not see the bracket in advance, so props to me for picking that one out of the hat. UCLA currently down by 3 with about 7 minutes left on the road in Utah, so this could quickly become a somebody else in Syracuse. Fantastic just to think of the two of the most successful coaches ever were John Wooden at UCLA and Jim Boeheim, who's still at Syracuse. They're both going to end up, even with some questionable wins and suspensions and stuff, they could both be, I think, top 5 all-time or something. And I think that Butler would be a heavy favorite against either one just because they both have had such below-average seasons, frankly. Granted, Syracuse came this close to beating Carolina the other night. Like, I get it, but close doesn't count.
Yeah. David, do you agree that those two teams belong in here in the first 4, at least at this point?
At this point, yeah. I mean, I don't know, again, exactly where they were, but I know I had them both in this range.
Well, David, let me show you the last two teams that made it in here. They'll be showing up on the 12 line in half a second. And there they are, also on the 12 line, the winner of a very interesting Texas Marquette game in the we didn't get Shaka versus we did get Shaka battle.
Yeah, God, Texas, another team that's just just in a complete free fall right now. I really thought the Longhorns would have been better this year than what they ended up being. And they really, really, really need to pull it together just to even get into the Dayton. Marquette, I'm not – I mean, again, I could make the case for them if I really had to, but they seem like sort of a weak case to me.
Well, there's both those profiles. And, John, let me ask you about them. Texas, a profile that's heading in the wrong direction quickly. Marquette, 2 wins in a row to kind of bounce back a little bit here.
They are. Very similar profiles, which I think is why you were correct to put them in very similar things. Obviously, the non-conference strength of schedule is pretty drastically different. Both have been averaged below average at home, and the overall records are about the same. I like the fact that they both have chances down the stretch. Obviously, everybody in the Big 12 has good chances left because it's the Big 12. Marquette better beat DePaul and Georgetown on the road, and then with a team like we said, Creighton, who is heading the wrong direction. They could easily go 3 for 3 and be 19-11, win the first, lose the second in Big East, 20-12, with a lot of tier 1s, including a sweep of Seton Hall and Creighton. I think that's pretty bubblicious.
Yeah, I need to retract what I just said a second ago. Like when I meant weak case, but look, how many times have we had a bubble team with like 3 road wins against teams that were solidly in the field like that? Like normally it almost takes the conference tournaments have to play out before you get what normally looks like a tournament resume from some of these bubble teams. So is this some sort of an anomaly, or is it always like this? Because it seems like every year we talk about how weak the bubble is. We haven't mentioned that this year. In fact, it's actually kind of strong.
I agree with you. I think the bubble has to be a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit more of a smaller group for it also. Let me show you the first top 4 teams out. Right there, the number 1 team out that just missed was the Bonnies, followed by this Utah team that has a chance to move up if they pull off this UCLA win tonight, USC and Oklahoma State.
Yeah. The Bonnies are interesting. Their RPI is really healthy. I mean, it's way in the range of what you're normally used to seeing. The only thing that they're lacking is pretty much everything else.
Pretty much. Well, I mean, a home win over Rhode Island, a road win over Syracuse, and a lot of bad losses, John. I mean, I don't see it. I'm not one of the people that thought the Bonnies were even close. They were not in my top 50.
You know, I'm on record as being off the Bonnie bandwagon. I was driving it in December, and then they started getting the hiccups. And then when you lose back-to-back to Dayton and Davidson and St. Joe's in January, I'm done with you. The Oklahoma State resume, if you haven't seen it, their last 5 wins, granted, they've also lost 7 games in between because the Big 12 is so ridiculous. Their last 5 wins, Texas Tech, West Virginia, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Are there 5 better wins by anybody in the nation? I mean, that's amazing.
And you throw in they've beaten Florida State as well. The problem with Oklahoma State is the volume of losses. I think that's the only problem I have with them. But all those losses are against 12 teams that are
60 teams.
really good.
Yeah. All those they have not lost a team. Well, okay, other than Kansas State, no one has beaten them that is not in the field. Is that right? Is that an accurate statement?
Kansas
State's in our field? Oh.
Yeah. They came in on the 11 line there.
Okay.
Every loss is against someone in the field.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's very few teams in the nation that can say that.
Right.
But John, what about this other team I have up on the right there, Utah? Especially if they get this win tonight over UCLA, they're up 4 late. How seriously are you looking at the Utes right now?
I wasn't seriously, but the fact that if they can hold on against UCLA, even though it's at home, is going to be solid. I don't know if they can back it up by beating USC as well in a couple nights. And then Colorado, always tough but doable. If this team is 20-9, I mean, they could win the Pac-12 tourney, which was unthinkable a month ago or even a couple weeks ago. Tons of losses on the road, a bit of a home court hero. And when your best win is at ASU by 3, I don't know that that's something to write home about, but they have an opportunity to pick up some solid wins that they need to pick up.
Like all of them.
The non-conference strength of schedule outside the top 200 is atrocious, so that'll probably hurt them.
Yeah. 4 more teams that got a little bit of consideration from people: Louisville, LSU, Washington, Western Kentucky. David, do you want to make any is there a serious case to be made for any of them that they actually belong up in the field at the moment?
If you ask me who I like the best out of them, I really want to like Western Kentucky. I think they certainly had the best singular win out of this group.
Well,
but
they're all on the list because you voted them number 50. Nobody else voted them at all. So
okay. And that's because I'm trying to like them. I mean, they have won a lot of road games. They do have the win away from home against Purdue. Washington, the win at Kansas is really good. Well, it was mostly at Kansas anyway. Louisville is just not having a very good week.
Well, how about, John, how about LSU? I mean, are they moving? Do they still have a chance here? They don't have another shot for another tournament quality win with their last 3, although they would be top 100 wins. And they've got the sweep of A&M, the Michigan win, the Houston win.
Houston win is looking better every day, obviously, as is Michigan. A sweep of A&M is certainly something to write home about. It's a shame if that 1-point loss to Stephen F. is going to keep them out because everything else looks decent. If you can throw up Louisville on the left side while we finish with LSU, you want to see an Oklahoma State-type resume where you only lose to teams who are in the tourney, wait till you see Louisville. It's just – they're all top 50.
I'll tell you the one thing I like about Oklahoma State better is that they have more quality wins, though, than just beating Florida State.
True. That's why they have a better shot, I think, as of today.
And Louisville just not playing well. Golly.
Because they're playing the best 50 teams in the nation every night.
Yeah, but I mean, they could lose by less than 20. And I'd feel
nice.
a little bit better about them.
They also have bigger problems than playing games this week, I assure you.
Well, yeah, and it's like if they miss the field this year, it may be a while before they're in it again.
Some potential first-round matchups here. The rest of the 12 line, David, I just revealed New Mexico State is West Virginia's opponent. Loyola Chicago's Ohio State's opponent, and South Dakota State, who survived a tough game tonight against their rivals,
Yeah.
Michigan opponent.
Oh man, that would be a fun one.
All those games, I think.
Yeah, well, all those would be good. Loyola, those would all be good games. The 12 and 13 lines are, and now again, the chalk has to hold because none of these teams are inside the bubble. But what great games those would be!
Yeah, Titel. I mean, Belmont against Cincinnati, Buffalo against Arizona, Vermont against Wichita State. A former Hurley school now for Arizona.
Bring on all the Hurleys, man. I don't care. Anybody, bring them all on.
David, let's quickly go through the last 3 seed lines here. The 14 seeds are showing up there. The opponents for the 3 seeds. You see East Tennessee State, another dangerous team, but probably over their heads with Purdue there. Rider, Charleston, and Montana as well.
Rider had a rough night tonight, didn't they? They were
bad loss at Monmouth tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, they were losing by about 50 the last I saw.
They're
not by that much, but.
The 15 lines, Northern Kentucky, last year's darlings, playing Auburn in the first round.
Killing me.
Potential 52 upset there. Penn against Duke, Titel, your other school.
Can't you give me a 16 seed so I can lose to Villanova by 30 again? I don't want to play Duke. You're killing me.
That's why you're putting Penn on the 16 line. I found Santa Barbara's against Carolina, Bucknell against Michigan. A very dangerous team against Michigan State there. And if there is going to be a 15-2 upset with this bracket, David, I'd kind of circle that.
Right, because again, Bucknell not having kind of underachieving this year, but their ceiling is still pretty high.
I mean, we thought this would be a 12-seed caliber Bucknell team heading into the season, and they still have the same talent there. On the 16 line, Wagner and UNC Asheville avoiding the first 4. Our first 4 matchups are Gulf Coast Savannah State winner taking on Kansas, and the Nichols State Southern winner taking on Virginia, because unfortunately Grambling's waiver has not yet been granted out of this.
Right, we're still working on that.
We are still working on it. But let me run through that. John, let me ask you first, and then David will ask you. Any other thoughts as you look at this, or any other final thoughts for the evening overall?
So I want to focus on the coaches out west. Obviously, tons of great coaches. I mean, in the East, we got Villanova and Duke as your top 2. You got the champion from 2016 and the champion from 2015, so plenty of hardware there. If you look here, you got Bill Self, number 1, Tom Izzo, number 2. We'll skip number 3. Mark Few is in the title game, number 4. John Beilein is, I think, unofficially the 2013 champ now that Louisville has been vacated. That's a ton of great coaches out there. It's going to be tough for anybody outside the top 5 seeds to do anything in that region, I think.
John, actually, the number 1 team there, Kansas, you emailed an interesting fact about Kansas earlier. Do you want to throw it out there?
So I posted my interview earlier today with LSU legendary coach Dale Brown, who's one of the nicest guys I've ever interviewed. And we were talking today as he thanked me and made several edits. And he suggested that he send me a list of fun facts. And usually when I get these, it's stuff I already know. But I might have heard this one before and just forgotten it. The only coach with a losing record in Kansas history is the founder of the freaking sport, Dr. James Naismith. I mean, I still don't believe it.
I guess the game had passed him by a little bit by the time he got the job at Kansas. Yeah.
David, any other final thoughts from you looking at the field?
Yeah, it's a shame that you just don't like to have any fun with the matchups. We could have had Butler Purdue out in the South. We didn't. You had the chance to match up Cincinnati and Xavier potentially in the Sweet 16, and as well as Wichita State, Kansas in the Sweet 16. If one or both of those matchups came to about and it was in the Sweet 16, meaning that it didn't just come to fruition with only 48 hours of buildup, it would be amazing. I hope the committee I hope that happens, that those two could potentially meet in that round. What a fun thing that would be. And with Michael Porter back, in all kidding aside, what kind of an atmosphere would we see if Kansas and Missouri are squared off to meet in the round of 32 in Wichita?
I think it's very possible, especially if they get a few more wins and move more solidly into that 8-9 range. And I would absolutely love to see it. I agree with you. I hate to agree with you about anything, David, but I do agree with you. You got to give me a little credit for what I did in the East region with Arizona, getting all the Hurleys. Heck, I even threw
Yeah.
Wagner in the East region there, the former school of both Hurleys when they coached together. So, but I guess on that note, let me pull this down here. And what I want to do is just thank everybody for joining us on behalf of John Teitel, David Griggs, and David. I just got to throw it up here because we are getting very close to something for you. 2 days,
No,
22 hours from you getting into the puppet bunker.
No. We're not doing that this year. We're
Yeah,
not doing that. Remember, it didn't work.
In fact, our next
No.
podcast will be coming to you Sunday evening, as David will be locked in the puppet bunker.
No, we need a new server. I got to go get the new server, the new host.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll talk to you again real soon.